Welcome to Leggari, everyone. Today, we are going to show you how you can use Leggari Stone Kits to transform existing surfaces. We coated these custom-built countertops and explained every step of the way. When you're finished watching, you'll be able to do this yourself. This kit has a lifetime warranty and is extremely DIY friendly. So if your countertops need a renovation, don't replace them, resurface them.
All right, guys, I want to show you how to mix the primer for this Leggari Stone Kit. Very simple. We have the part A, the part B. Once we mix these two together, we're going to add 2 ounces of water. So the first thing we want to do is you just give each of these a little bit of a shake, just to blend anything inside that may have settled during packaging or transit. Make sure the lids are on snug. And then even the part B, which is where the actual pigment is, we'll actually put the water in that side. This primer is absolutely phenomenal. It creates a chemical bond to the surfaces that it's applied to. So even one of these counters wouldn't sand very well. Sometimes you get these HD Formica counters that don't sand very well, even with a palm sander. And so you're going to want to use a primer like this to create that bond. We're going to add the part B. Then we're going to take the 2 ounces of water and pour it in the part B. We like doing this because we feel like we can get all the material out. You can mix this primer up with a drill, with a paddle mixer, something a little bit smaller like this on low speed, or you can just do it by hand with a stir stick. The primers mix very easily. It's a water-based primer, and so it's not as bad or as smelly as some of the solvent-based primers that people have used in the past. It's an absolutely phenomenal technology. All right, been mixing it for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half now. It's ready to go. I'll give this to Tyler. He'll show you how to roll it out.
So I'm going to show you guys how to apply the primer. We like to use a 3/8 nap roller, which I have here. But when you're using these, you always have to de-shed them, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. We're gonna get any loose hairs off of this by just rolling it on some painter's tape. So just pull out the strip of tape, roll the roller on it, just like so, and this is gonna remove any loose hairs that are on it. So it's good to get in the habit of always doing that, whether it's primer, epoxy, no matter what, always de-shed your nap rollers. And then I got a paintbrush in case I have any corners I can't hit. And so we're gonna just dip and roll out of a roller tray. And I always like to take a minute, kind of soak the roller up, get it nice and saturated with that primer. And then all we do is just roll a strip down the middle, and then we cross roll that. So if you're going to be doing a backsplash on your walls or whatever, you don't necessarily need to get the primer all the way up there. But we're not 100% sure they're gonna do that, or they haven't made up their mind. So we're just gonna paint this in. So once I get the top done, we're gonna hit our edge. And then I just wanna make sure I don't have any thick roller edges. You can see it's rolled out nice and thin. And then we'll just continue that process until all these counters are primed. And if you guys are caulking like they did here, you want to make sure it's a paintable latex caulk. Never use silicone. So they are doing a backsplash here, guys, but I'm just going to paint this in so I don't have to get so close to the wall. So a few things with the primer, guys. If you're gonna prime, try to coat the same day within about 2 hours. It's a fast set primer, so it doesn't take long to set up. You can kind of see it's already setting up in spots. It's tacky, but it's not pulling up, still a little wet here. If I put some airflow or a fan on this, it'll dry like that. So if you're gonna prime, you wanna coat the epoxy within about 2 hours. Don't go past that. You're gonna have to sand the surface or wipe it with denatured alcohol to kind of get it tacky. And then the other thing, if you're going, say you wanna do a white counter over a black existing counter, you really wanna do your edges and faces. 2 coats, you wanna get those as solid of that primer color as you can. The top's not as critical because it goes on a lot thicker, but the edges, it goes on thinner. And biggest thing is just make sure those are nice solid color, whatever primer you're doing. And it's usually if you're going over a lighter counter with the darker primer or vice versa. So keep that in mind, and then we'll show you the next steps once this sets up a little bit more. All right, guys, the next step is we want to tape off our faces to create that barrier to keep that resin on the top. Best way to do that, painter's tape, yellow. It's 1.88 inch, 2 inch, and we want to tape it about halfway onto the face and halfway above. And it looks like this. So what I like to do, pull the tape out, and then I can kind of guide it where I need it. And if I put it in the wrong spot, we'll just pop it off. Really get in your corners and stuff, make sure you get a nice tight seal there. And then we're gonna do one more row of tape. Try to get it the same level or close to. And then we want to press that down really tight, make sure we get a good seal. Now, if you guys aren't using our primers and you try to put tape on something else that's not all the way dry, because this is really tacky, it's not fully dry, it's still really sticky, but it's not pulling up on my fingers. Most of the time that tape's gonna pull whatever you put down, but you can go over our primer when it's tacky with tape and it's not gonna peel off, it's still gonna cure underneath our tape. So we've never had an issue with our tape pulling our primers off. So just remember that. If you guys are using something else, you're gonna wanna wait probably 24 hours. So we really recommend using our primers when doing epoxy kits. So again, just press this down really good, get a nice tight seal, and then we're gonna do the same thing with these holes here. They can kind of be a little tricky. I'll usually start with a small piece of tape. Press that in there good. We don't need to do 2 strips on these. And we'll do the front edge here. And then since we want this to stop there, we're gonna just take a couple extra rows here. All right, so we'll come back here. Now these counters are a little different because they're a lot skinnier. They don't have a thick face on them. So we're gonna have to tape these just a little bit different. You always wanna fold it under the tape. If we just tape like we did on those other counters that have the 1.5 inch face, it's gonna wind up bleeding through the tape and it's gonna start running. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Run our other strip. And then the last thing we got to do again, because we just have a little bit of surface for that tape to grab onto, we're going to fold this under. And this is what you do on if you're doing a sample board as well. Anything with skinny faces like this, you want to tape underneath the counter. Then we can really press that in. And that's it. So we'll do all the rest of the counters like that, and we'll show you guys the mixing. When you got corners on the outsides, we like to pinch them a little bit, create a little more tension on that tape. And then obviously sink's gonna cover this, but such a jagged area, almost impossible to create a seal with tape. So we're gonna just use weather stripping. And we're gonna go around this edge. Press this down good. So I'm just tearing this every couple inches so I can fold it flat. Weather stripping doesn't stick as good as the tape, so this will kind of be a backup. So you can see this was cut out a little bit better, not so many gouges and drill marks in it, so we're able to get a good tight seal with our tape, and so we didn't have to use that weather stripping like on the bathroom counter. When you guys have small edges like this also, and obviously, you know, a nice rounded corner here, we're gonna get a little buildup on this edge. And so we're gonna keep an eye on it, but if we need to brace these up, the easiest way to do it is take some paint sticks, put tape on one, and then you would just put it on this edge. Just like so. That's going to add a lot of rigidity to that tape, so you could space those out every 6 inches, 8 inches.
All right, we're gonna mix up these two Leggari Stone Kits. These Leggari Stone Kits consist of 4 midnight pearls, an adamantium, and creamsicle. And again, we have 2 kits we're gonna mix up. So each kit consists of the same thing. Now, the counters are about 85 to 90 square feet. Each kit will do up to about 50. So we're not gonna use maybe every single pour. I'm not worried about inducing bubbles into the mix. We have special additives that helps the mix release bubbles. So I'm just gonna be going fast and furious with this electric drill and a paddle mixer. So I'm going to mix all the clear resin, and then we'll pour it into some other containers and mix in the powder. And we'll show you that in just a second. So the first thing we want to do is grab a couple brand new 5-gallon buckets, and we want to pour the part A into these containers and just let them drain for a little bit. Now you can let them drain for as long as you'd like. You'll see here that I'm gonna let them drain for just a few minutes. You can let them sit upside down for 15 to 20 minutes. It doesn't really matter. But we just want to get as much resin as we can. These containers tend to hold a lot of the resin on the sides, inside, quite a bit. There's a lot of surface area. They're easy pour containers, but they're a lot better than dealing with like paint can type designs where you can't scrape the edges and you can't reclose the tops. These are very easy to work with. Everyone who uses them absolutely loves them. Now, one thing I want to mention is, of course, the top of the handle can hold some material, so if you pour it out too fast, it's real simple. You just tip it back up, about 5 to 10 seconds, just let some of it drain out of that handle, and then tip it back over. What we're looking for is we just want these streams to turn into more like drips, just slowly starting to drip out of there. So we'll give these just a few more minutes. I'll tilt them more upright. All right, so sound quality is gonna be a little bit better. For the rest of this part of this video, we got the lapel mics on. So just waiting for these to turn into a drip, a small drip instead of streams. All right, I'm happy with that. So again, you can leave these tipped upside down in these buckets for 15, 20 minutes. I just did a couple minutes because I want to start mixing these batches. And since I know I don't need all of this mix for these counters, I'm not worried about a few ounces in the buckets. So now I have 2 batches of Part A resin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the Part B, which is the hardener, into this. I'm gonna mix it for about 1.5 minutes, moving the paddle mixer up and down for about 1.5 minutes, scraping the sides, the bottom, and then I'm gonna dump it into a brand new bucket and mix it for about 30 more seconds. You always wanna use a secondary mixing bucket. That'll ensure that you never have a soft spot on your counters. So I'm gonna do that to both of these batches, and then we'll start mixing in the metallics. I'll show you a fast way to mix in the metallics. I'm only going to mix in the hardener in this first bucket and then mix up the resin. I'm not going to pour both hardeners in because you don't want the hardener sitting in this second bucket until I'm going to get to it. Because of how we teach how to mix and because our epoxy releases air bubbles, you have the luxury of mixing batches very quickly. It doesn't take 3 to 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes to mix our resin. Just about 2 minutes, about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes of mixing. And if you mix just like I'm showing you, you won't have any issues. So again, about a minute and a half in this first bucket, very, very quickly, and then I'll dump it into a brand new bucket. All right, that first mix is actually done. It's kind of nice to have an electric drill because they're pretty powerful. Just going to spin that off in the bucket, set my drill down. Obviously, it's going to get messy on that part of the table. That's why we have plastic on the floor. We have a cover over the table. I'm already planning on making a mess even before I have. So just going to transfer all of this resin into this other bucket. And it's a brand new bucket. Now I'm gonna set this over here. And I don't know if you can actually tell, but there's actually the stuff I scraped off the side, I can actually see it in the bucket. That's the culprit of soft spots on counters and even floors, is it's impossible to get the resin mixed on the side of the first bucket. That's why we always use a secondary mixing bucket. So about 1.5 minutes there. I'm gonna do another 20 to 30 seconds here, and we're ready to go. All right, this bucket is actually ready to go. So gonna pour this one in, do the same thing. Mix for about 1.5 minutes, moving the drill up and down, scraping the sides with the drill. Then I will scrape it all into a brand new bucket, mix it for another 30 seconds. If you're mixing multiple batches, the other thing you can do is, obviously Tyler and I have been doing this a very long time. We're very efficient, very fast at this. You can pour out the first batch into all the containers, and the other person doing the counters can start the process while you're mixing the second batch, because really you don't want this sitting in the bucket for a long time. So we'll show you, once I mix this up, what that looks like of separating these buckets. We like to keep some denatured alcohol around. Keep your gloves clean, keep the tools clean. It'll keep the whole area pretty clean. Mix this for another 30 seconds. All right, now we have 2 fully mixed batches of resin. And I want to reiterate, guys, mix up your first batch, then do what I'm going to show you right now, and then focus on your second batch. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to pull out a couple of these 2-quart containers, because I have 4 colors that are the same in each of these batches, the Midnight Pearl, but I want to do 1 Adamantium and 1 Creamsicle. So what I want to do is just pour out about 60 ounces of resin for the Adamantium and the Creamsicle. And I'll leave the rest in here. Now I'm gonna put a respirator on in a minute. We're inside an environment where I'm not gonna try to put a lot of these metallics in the air, because they'll stay in the air for quite a while. But after I'm done explaining this, I'm actually gonna put my mask on. So I'm just gonna pour the Adamantium and the Creamsicle in their mix, and then I'm gonna pour all 4 bags of the Midnight Pearl in the large container. Now remember, all of this product has already been mixed twice. A little trick of the trade here is, if you start at your lightest color and work to your darkest color, you don't need to switch the drills. So I'm going to start at the Creamsicle, then do Adamantium, then do the Midnight Pearl. All right, guys, I'm gonna mix up the second batch just like this, but you wanna just do this process and then give it to the person. I'm doing both batches, which you probably shouldn't do. So stay tuned on how you should separate this. All right, now I have all of our batches. Now what we want to do is I'm going to show you how to do a batch at a time. So we're going to set out 6 containers. These are 2-quart containers. We're going to make 6 batches for Tyler to pour out. And we're just like chefs. We're just going to start mixing everything together. So some of these I want to get some of the Creamsicle going down the side and onto the bottom. I'm going to do about 3 with some Creamsicle in the bottom, and I want to do 3 with some Adamantium in the bottom because we're going to have a lot of black. And I'm just going to make the second batch just like this. Now it doesn't matter if you do multiple kits because Tyler's going to spread each of these batches all throughout the counters. So we're just gonna pour some Midnight Pearl. And what I'm looking to do is get lots of agitation in these containers. So I wanna be pouring small amounts into all of them. A lot of mixture. As I'm pouring it in, it's mixing. And now we're just going to layer these things a bit. Now I'll pour some Adamantium in, the ones with orange, and I'll pour some of the Creamsicle in the ones with Adamantium in the bottom. The beauty of these stone kits, guys, is that you almost can't screw them up. And as it gets fuller and fuller, as I pour the Midnight Pearl in these containers, it's really cool because you can clearly see it kind of create a vortex and start mixing. Now what I'll do is I'll maybe take the Adamantium and the Creamsicle a little bit together, create a little bit of a 2 vortexes in there. Now what I want to do before I get too far along is I'm going to go back to this one and I'm just going to let this pour down the side a bit. We've noticed with some of these batches that we have a lot of cool colors to work with if we can get it to stick to the side a bit. And I'm going to do the same thing just like I did in the bottom. These were the ones, I had Adamantium in the bottom of this container as well. Now I'm getting a little crazy with this batch, but I can easily remember how to do this on the next batches. I'm not real worried about it. Now we'll get it to mix a little bit. I'll pour it on the other side, away from that. It's amazing how the colors will come through as Tyler pours this out. Now I can scrape the bottom of those if I'd like. I'm going to scrape these for sure. This is why it's important to just do one batch at a time, guys, just because it does take a little bit of time. And notice the mess I'm making, not worried about the mess. I kind of enjoy the mess a little bit. You just embrace it. So now I have the first batch ready and made, and I'm gonna give it to the person who's doing the counter. In this case, it's Tyler. And then you'll want to start mixing the second batch. So here it is. I'm going to wipe these up a little bit and then hand them to Tyler.
All right, so I got my containers. I want to get these dumped out as soon as I can. I went around and put an adamantium that was on the bottom and then a creamsicle. So basically every counter has one of these, and then I can get those poured out real quick, and then I can judge what other colors I need and where. So we'll just get started. If you guys, you can always draw on the primer, map out a design if you want. Really easy, but I'm just gonna kind of just go random, and it's always gonna look cool. There's a lot of different ways you can apply this stuff as far as pouring it out, and they always look cool. So we're just gonna get started here. And I like to pour out smaller veins and then kind of add to them as we go. And notice I got a lot of black there. So I'm always constantly keeping track of what color's coming out. Make sure we get a little black up in here. So once I get down to the colors in here, I'm gonna start jumping around, make sure I get color everywhere. All right, so we're just gonna keep kind of jumping around, pouring some of these containers out. Try not to get it on the wall, obviously. So I got some of that creamsicle silver coming out, so I want to make sure I'm jumping around these tops and not just pouring the rest of this out in one area. All right, so this one has the adamantium in the bottom. So we're probably gonna get mostly black coming out in the beginning. And then when we get to that bottom, we'll get that adamantium color. So we're getting down to that adamantium and a little bit of that creamsicle. So again, I just want to kind of throw that all over the counter. Make sure we get those colors all throughout the top. Like we got a dark bead, so we want to kind of break that up a little bit. So guys, you'll notice I just keep constantly jumping around. I know that these fresh batches are gonna pour out mostly black. So I've been kind of make sure I'm getting black in all the tops. And then when I get down to some of that color that's coming out, I'll kind of jump around and get that everywhere as well. I'm gonna try not to pour too much in between these because this is gonna still level out. This will wind up touching. So when I'm pouring my beads, I kind of want to split the difference. Try to pour it down the middle of each one and not get too much where they're close to touching. Getting down to that color now. So that adamantium and creamsicle. All right guys, so getting down to that creamsicle and adamantium. Do a couple spots on here. Might not pick up here because it's a little darker in this corner, but we got a lot of cool veins out here. This is gonna look beautiful when it's all done. So I'll run this. I highlight one of these patterns. All right, so we're gonna go get some more cups. Get some fresh gloves on here. So guys, like I've been saying, we've been jumping around. We'll get a little bit more conscious. If I start pouring this first cup out, it's just gonna add a lot more black. So I'm gonna go start on a different counter. Come out here when we get down to the color, add a little bit more out here just to kind of even all the counters out. So if you come back and look at this one, you know, quite a bit of creamsicle in it in spots. And so we're gonna start with the one that has creamsicle in the bottom. And again, we know we're gonna get a lot of black coming out first. So you can see we're getting a lot of that midnight pearl coming out first. So we'll fill in some of these spots. Do a little bit more and then we'll run up to that front top. I wanted to split that up, so I just poured that right through that pile right there. So we're just gonna throw this kind of randomly all over the top here. Get these other colors to pop through. So now we have some really cool veining coming out. So I want to kind of get that all throughout the top as well. So what we just keep going around and filling in any bare spots. And notice I haven't poured too much up right next to these tape edges. I kind of let it just flow there. If I'm pouring next to it, I want to be small amounts. We don't want to pour a big pile right next to the tape. Getting towards our last bucket here, so I'm just going around and being a little bit more precise with how I pour it out and just hitting any spots that are kind of bare. So I'll finish pouring the rest of this stuff out and then I'll show you guys how we can fill in any spots or kind of blend any areas that we don't necessarily like. Okay, so we're gonna do a accent vein highlighting one of these fractures that we have going on here. So we got a lot of the creamsicle and we're just gonna follow one of these. I think I'll follow maybe this guy right here, highlight him, and then maybe a little guy over here so it can kind of flow down that edge. We're looking for just a really small fracture looking vein. And then I'm just following the edge of one that we already have out here. And then I'll just follow this guy too. So easy way to add some cool fracture veins of solid colors. Just take a little leftover, scrape that out of that bucket, and then you can do really tiny, small ones that look really cool. So next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna go around and look, make sure we don't have any spots that are missed, especially on your back tape edges is where you always wanna look really good. And then if you have any spots that maybe looks like a half circle or a puddle that was poured out, I'm sure we'll find some. I'll be able to show you how to blend those in a little more, but this counter's pretty dialed. So we'll go look at the other ones. You see the tape got pushed back here. If we wouldn't have sealed the bottom, see how much it's holding? This would have all been dripping. But since we pushed that tape underneath there, it's kind of holding it up there. So like right here, right? Not a very natural look. So we're just gonna kind of run through that, blend that up a little bit, follow one of those veins. So like edges like this, we want to fill in. And since we have a black primer and a dark counter, you really want to look closely. Like right here, doesn't take much. Just pat that in, that'll help level that out. So yeah, everything looks good. Again, just blending your hand through there. When we hit the isopropyl with this, it'll make that look natural, just like everything else. So again, we just got some spots that need a little help to level out, get rid of that surface tension, allow that resin to flow back in there. So I'm gonna mist the surface with denatured alcohol. It's gonna make this layout glass smooth. We don't have to torch it, we don't have to do any of that stuff. We're just gonna mist it with denatured alcohol. If you guys want some more of those dispersing effects or those cells, you can spritz it with isopropyl alcohol first, and then you can spray denatured about 10 minutes later. But we like the look right now, so we're just gonna mist it. And it's not really going to affect the look of it at all. It's just going to pop all these bubbles for us. And make it lay out glass smooth. So guys, if you're gonna be in an area kitchen, wear a mask. We're kind of spraying these and moving on, so we're not gonna be hanging out in that area. But it's definitely a good idea to wear a mask when you're spraying denatured alcohol. But you'll see how this just makes that surface lay out like glass. All right, so check it out, guys. We had, like I figured, right? The resin built up there, broke our seam of tape, but it didn't bleed through because we taped under the bottom. So if we wouldn't have pushed that tape under the bottom, all this resin would have just been leaking off the top. But it's basically ready to pull. And an easy way to, I'll show you guys an easy way to test. Kind of tough right here, but we're just gonna pull this off now and let that kind of flow over the edge. And we just want to make sure everything's coated on the edge. So any missed spots, like right here, I can see primer. We want to brush these in so that can evenly flow over and bring that design down the face of it and make it look like it was cut out of a slab of stone. Right there, I'm gonna miss spot. So if you guys want to test it, you can pull the tape back a little, and if the resin just starts running super fast, see how slow it's moving? Like if I tilt this tape back, see how it's just barely flowing down? That's what we're after. If it's moving really fast, you want to wait a little bit, because if we pull the tape too early, it's going to want to pull. It'll pull all the design from the top, and make it look like it ran. So we want to keep this look, and that's how we do it, by letting that resin sit up a little, and then it won't drag the design off the top. So now I'm just going to brush in all the faces. And don't worry about screwing your design up or colors that are coming over, because it's going to drip for another half an hour to an hour, maybe even a little more. And these edges will look just like the top is here shortly. So you'll see I'll brush that in, and we'll come back in a couple minutes and that vein will be down the face and look awesome. Look how awesome these edges look. Check this one. Just fold the tape back. See how it's barely moving? So this is perfect time. We got a lot thicker edge. So we're gonna pull this one now. And then we'll let that drip for a little bit, and we'll come back and brush in the faces. Brush in this face. It's gonna let the resin flow over evenly. So again, guys, we'll test this. Pull it back. So it's barely moving down the face, down that tape when I pull it back. So we're good to pull it. And then we'll let this guy run, and we'll go back to that bathroom counter and brush those faces in. Just slick it off so it can flow easier. So you can see it's already almost coated all the edges. We just want to help that out a little. Again, just brushing in any spots that aren't coated with the resin. All right, so faces are done. They're going to continue to drip. What I'm going to do is go around and spray one more time. Mist it with denatured alcohol real quick, and then I'll show you how to scrape your edges. And you'll have to do that periodically over the next hour, hour and a half, depending on temperature that you applied this at and how long it took you to apply it. That's it, guys. So I'll show you how to do your drips with the paint stick. It's still kind of fluid now, so it'll scrape real easy. We just run this along there, just like so, and that knocks all those drips off. And again, you're gonna have to do this periodically over the next maybe hour, hour and a half. And then when that resin starts to get sticky, it's always good to use like a putty knife or a scraper, something that's a little sharper, and it'll cut those off really nice when that resin gets sticky. All right, guys, I'm gonna show you, walk you through the process, how to mix our WB urethane. We're gonna be using matte. Whether you get gloss or matte, you're gonna mix it exactly the same. But before I do that, I'll kind of walk you around, show you what we did this morning just before we're gonna apply this. So, remember we taped off these spots to keep resin from running down there, which it works really well. We just took a blade and shaved this off. The resins, we did this, finished this late yesterday, so it's still a little too soft to sand. So we just cut these lips off. Whenever you tape up to resin, it'll kind of bleed up the tape a little, create like a little lip there. So we shaved those off. Same thing here. We shaved this off and then we just kind of sanded it very lightly. And then once we put our mat on here, it'll even all that out. Then we'll come back here to these other ones. So same thing here, kind of took that off. This is where we did the weather stripping, right? We couldn't get a good seal here with the tape, so we weather stripped it, we cut that out, shaved those lips off. And again, if it's not soft, you guys can just sand it 220 grit or higher, easy way to do it. But again, these are still really, really fresh, so they're really soft, so we didn't want to sand them right now. Same thing with this guy. Edges all look pretty good as far as the drips. Same thing here, cut these off. And then just kind of retaped any spots that we needed to cut out and retape. And that's about it. Now, with the urethane, it's not gonna drip like the resin. So if you guys wanna clean up, that's totally fine. You can clean up. A lot of contractors, they'll clean up and then they'll just retape anywhere the roller might touch the wall or a finished product, and then they don't have to come back the next day and clean anything up. You can pull that tape right when you're done. Real fast way to do it. So I have everything here you're gonna need. Roller tray, 6-inch roller, 3/8 nap. We are gonna de-shed this. I'll show you how to do that. Paintbrush to get into the tight areas, gloves. We got our urethane here, and then we're gonna need to add 2 ounces of water, which I have here. So first thing, we'll de-shed the roller just by pulling tape. We like to use the painter's tape. It's a lot stickier than blue tape. We're just gonna roll this on here. It's gonna remove any loose fibers that are on it. You kind of see you got a big chunk there that came off, a bunch of little fibers. So even if it says non-shedding, always de-shed them. All right, so I'll put gloves on here. And again, like I said before, if you're doing gloss, you're gonna mix it the exact same way. And then if you opted in to add the grit additive, I'll tell you when you guys are gonna add that. So we're just gonna shake up the Part A first. I always like to pour the Part A in first. It's a little more fluid than the Part B. I like to tilt this back, get any product that's in that handle there. Same thing with the B, shake it up a little. Not as critical because we're going to be adding the water to this, but don't need to try to get all that out since we're going to pour the water in here. And shake this up for a little bit. Gonna get the rest of that hardener out of there. And then I always mix the counter urethanes by hand. Mix is really, really easy. Gonna mix it for about 2-3 minutes. And as I'm mixing it, periodically scraping the sides, scraping the bottom. Make sure you're getting the corners good. So if you guys had the grit additive, you would slowly pour that in now and just keep mixing that. You want to mix that grit additive in until it's, you know, you don't have any clumps or anything like that. Just kind of mix that in for about a minute once you add that in there. All right, that's ready to go. So we're gonna pour it into the roller tray. I don't like to pour it above the lip here. So we'll just save this until we need it. So we have an option for a glass smooth finish just like this. It's our glaze coat. So the matte's extremely popular. People always want that. And again, this is on a project, so they chose the matte finish. But if you want this glass smooth finish, the glaze coat's what you guys are gonna want. The other option is our gloss urethane in gloss, but it does leave a minor texture to the surface, which gives it a lot of durability, but it doesn't lay out glass smooth like the glaze coat. So we're just gonna soak this roller up. I always like to do sections. I'm not gonna try to coat this whole thing and then do my back roll, so I'm gonna do like sections. So I'll do my edges first. Just about where I'm gonna do my first section. I'm gonna just get this so there's no real thick spots. Brush that out good. And then we're gonna apply this just like the primer. So we're gonna roll down the middle, and then we're gonna cross roll it. And I'm not worried about roller lines on the top right now. I'm just trying to get this spread out evenly to where it's not too thick. Once I got it kind of evened out everywhere, hit my edges, hit that face. Notice I'm not going past how far I went on the top. So I'm just doing sections at a time. And then after you hit your edges, you're gonna wind up indenting your roller. Don't start your back roll until you flatten the roller back out. So we'll just roll it out a little bit, get it flattened out, and then we'll do our back roll. And we're just being really light. Not applying any pressure really. And then always check, just make sure everything's hit, get at different angles. Because once we move on, we don't want to go back and have to hit a spot. So this looks really good, so we'll just keep going. And a lot of times you can get right to your edges with the roller. And then since I have such a small area to hit here, I'm not gonna soak the roller up completely. Kind of just roll it on the top. Maybe pull a little bit up there. All right, so that's pretty much it. So we just kind of continue that process until all the counters are coated. So again, guys, since the counters are soft, we finished these late yesterday. I don't want to set the roller tray on there. So we'll just go from the floor. You guys can see how fast our urethane is to apply to get that matte finish, so you don't have to sand your counters anymore to get that honed look that everyone does. You can just simply roll this stuff on and it's going to create that look. in just a matter of minutes. Yeah. What do you mean? So you guys can see it's already drying out. Now, when we do matte, we like to do 2 coats, just because sometimes if you look, these little spots, right, those will be glossy still. So the second coat will make the whole surface matte. Now, if you winded up sanding the top of your counters or something with 220 grit, you wouldn't have to do 2 coats. And this is just for the matte urethane. Glosses only need 1. And you have enough in your kit to do 2 coats. So obviously we did about 84 square feet of counters right now with one counter kit urethane. You would have had 2 with that because it's 2 counter kits. So I'm gonna show you how to kind of save your roller tray. And we didn't mix up. I'll show you how much we have left too. We probably have enough in here to do that second coat. So we got 8 ounces left out of 20, so, and it's gonna go farther the second coat. So I have enough here to do my other coat if needed. And the reason we send out plenty to do that is because some people put it on thicker, right? Not everyone's gonna put it on even, and we don't want you guys to run out. So we'll get all this out here, and then what we're gonna do, we don't wanna let this just sit out in the open, so I'm gonna put it in a garbage bag, kind of seal that up so it creates air from getting into it, and then that'll be fine when we go to reuse it. So what we're gonna do, just place it in the bag, and we'll just wrap this up. Now we'll be able to reuse this, and nothing's gonna dry out or get crusty in there and create flakes on the top. So we send out extra urethane because not everyone applies it the same. You don't wanna put it on thick, but some people wind up putting it on thick, and we don't want you guys to run out. So you should have enough to do 2 coats with 1 urethane counter kit, and we'll show you that process next. The cool thing about the urethanes is we don't have to wait 24 hours or the next day to do the second coat. Once that white milky haze goes away, we can apply the second coat, and it's usually within about an hour, hour and a half, we can apply the second coat. And if you guys put some airflow on there, right, you don't want to create dust, blow dust into it, but get some breeze on that, it's gonna dry out even faster. So we're gonna apply the second coat. As you can see, all the whiteness has gone away, the milky haze that it had, so it's still gonna be sticky, but we can coat the second coat on this without an issue. So again, guys, we're gonna be applying it the exact same way. It's gonna go a little bit farther, this coat. And I'm not worried about hitting my edges. With the paintbrush, so we can just do the second coat. So I'm doing my back roll the opposite way. Roller was kind of bouncing around, so I'm just trying to flatten some of these off a little bit. If you guys are back rolling into a section, you want to feather it off. You don't want to just stop and pick it up. Just kind of feather that off. So I'm getting down to the last of that first counter kit, so we're gonna have to make some more. But again, guys, you just apply it the same way. So we'll finish these counters up. I'll mix that other kit, and then we'll show you guys what it looks like when it all dries out.